na binasa natin ngayon. I cannot promise to you that I have all the answers in the world, but I think understanding our young people might make a difference. Lalo na ipapakita ko sa inyo why I do not believe in the youth vote from a sociological perspective. Ayan. Pag-iisipan po natin, what historical markers might have defined your time as you were growing up? Some of you might say, martial law. Therefore, we can perhaps come up with the category martial law generation. And that also explains why you have people who are divided when it comes to authoritarianism, right? Those who are really all about democracy and those who are all about supporting strongmen. Kasi merong parts sa generation na nag-benefit from authoritarianism, merong part from that generation who really suffered under the martial law. So therefore, you can talk about the martial law generation. You can also talk about the war generation, the World War II generation. When I was growing up, 1980s, 1990s, I would distinctly remember my grandmother. My grandmother hails from Guimaras, and she was here in Manila back in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. And nasasabi niya sa akin, Jay, kumain ka ng gulay. Ayoko pong kumain ng gulay, mamang. No? Pero bakit ko po kailangan kumain ng gulay? Laging isa lang sasabihin niya, kasi pag dumating ang gera, wala kang kakaining karne. Simple statement like that, ladies and gentlemen, can already be a marker of that generation. Am I making sense po, mga kapatid? I hope this is making sense to you all. So therefore, may values na dala sila lola. They carry certain values, they carry certain dispositions in life, they carry certain sayings, slogans, mottos, beliefs, practices that could be explained because they underwent powerful, compelling, shared experiences. So, simply saying, millennial tayo, young people in college today are Gen Z, they don't mean anything. Okay, you're getting the point now. You're getting the drift of my presentation. So therefore, might it make sense na instead of coming up with these categories, let's come up with more locally relevant categories in the Philippines. Martial law generation, check. Post-1986 generation, check. I would even propose to you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's a generation shaped by OFW or migration consciousness. Remember, we began sending OFWs in the 1970s. Their children were born in the 1980s. I'm one of them. My father was a seaman, right? And then we grew up in the 1990s, benefiting from the hardships of our OFW parents. And in fact, those who were born in the 1990s have this OFW consciousness without them realizing it. Bakit? Every time their parents would come back, they would go to, correct, duty-free. They would go shopping. They would benefit from that. They were exposed to the cosmopolitan values because of the economic ability of their parents. So, martial law generation, 1986 generation, OFW generation. Those who were born after 2000, we need to ask ourselves, can we already come up with a definition, with a category? Something for us to think about. And I'll propose to you another category towards the end of my presentation. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, sociologists are now, around the world, are now saying that this COVID pandemic is the global generation defining moment. One day, people who are growing up today, yung mga nag-online classes, right? They will grow up one day and they will look back on this time and thinking, wow, we missed a lot of opportunities because of the pandemic. We failed to play with our neighbors. We failed to learn things the way we should have or the way our older generations did. But again, we cannot say it right now because we don't know how exactly the pandemic is going to shape their values, their beliefs, their practices, their political choices. Kaya sa akin, dangerous whenever we already pick up categories like Generation Alpha. If they were born in 2010, how old might they be now? 11 years old? Can we already define them? We cannot. So you're getting the point, ladies and gentlemen. We need to understand what experiences must have shaped young people or generations before we can fully comprehend generational change. If you're interested in religious change, are people losing religion? It also goes back to generational change. I don't have time to cover that, but sociologist of generation din po ako, later on during the open forum, we can discuss are people losing faith? There is a generational explanation there. I'll explain that to you if you want to bring that up later on. So, in summary of the first half of my lecture, it's analytically wrong to import categories like millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomer, Gen Alpha, because they are directly imported from the West with different contexts, different story, different values. And normally, and this brings me to my number two, we essentialize young people by using these generational categories. Ginagamit natin yung, young people are impatient. Ladies and gentlemen, ako po nadi-disappoint ako whenever I hear local experts and then they would, and then tatanungin sila on TV or on radio, ano po masasabi niyo sa mga kabataan ngayon? And then they would come up with surveys. Tapos yung survey, ginamit pala sa North America. Tapos sasabihin nila, Filipinos, ang millennials or Gen Z, they're impatient, they're arrogant, they're narcissistic, they want to move from one job to another. And then it makes me wonder, which Filipinos is he or is she referring to? Most of the time, and I think you can get the drift now, most of the time, they're only referring to the affluent, which are unfortunately the minority in the Philippines. Ateneo students, yes, posible, kasi mayayaman eh. But state university students, it's a different story. Out of school youth, it's a different story. I'll get to that bit by bit. Okay pa po ba tayo? If I just wanted to check with you all, okay pa po ba kayo? If you have some thoughts or questions, please just feel free to already put them in the chat box. Adrian has got a question for me. So Adrian Pantonial, let me just deal with this before I carry on. Maganda yung tanong niya, no? Can this past nearly 2 years of pandemic be also considered a generation itself because it's also a shared experience? Though usually a generation is typically 20 years in duration, right? Okay, Adrian, great. Nabanggit ko na kanina. So ang tanong, Adrian, ladies and gentlemen, is that can the pandemic already define the generation? Can we already come up with the category, the COVID generation? My quick answer to you, Adrian, is yes, we can, but we need to be cautious. Again, the idea, Adrian, and ladies and gentlemen, is that we want to understand shared experiences because these shared experiences shape people's beliefs, people's values, people's attitudes in life, people's political choices, people's choice of music, people's religion, etc., etc. In other words, there are shared experiences are consequential. Kaya nabanggit ko kanina, online learning. If this pandemic doesn't go away for 1 more year or 2 more years, and then we're still online learning, can you imagine our college students have practically gone through their entire undergraduate degrees without seeing their campus? That's what's already happening. Kami sa Ateneo, my fourth year students, the students right now, fourth year, they left campus in second year. So they've practically never enjoyed the campus. Ang tanong, meron siyang isa pang tanong si Adrian. Though usually a generation is typically 20 years in duration, right? The answer, Adrian, is no. We don't have, from a sociological perspective, we cannot come up with a magic number to define a generation. Kunwari, 1980 to year 2000, that's one generation. No. Or 50 years. No. It all depends on shared experiences that shape a particular generation. So if you want to even think about it, America, for example, North America, my professors back in the day would say na, in fact, we can even think of a 9/11 generation. People who went through the terror of 9/11, and we're celebrating the 20th anniversary tomorrow, by the way. And that consciousness of terror has shaped even the fears that many Americans have about Islam and about foreigners in North America today. 20 years down the road, you're still sensing the impact of 9/11. Something to that effect. Okay? Sige po. Thank you for that question, Adrian. Excellent. However, so we welcome these essentialisms, these categories, because, and this is where I will become a little critical, no, I'm halfway through, because they serve the interests of powerful sectors. Worth reiterating here is the interest of businesses and the advertising industry to, quote unquote, discipline the youth. And I use the word discipline there, meaning to control the youth. This has implications too on how we understand the youth vote. Jayeel, what do you mean? Medyo masyado namang jargony yung sentence na yan, yung phrase na yan. No? Masyadong jargony. No. If you're those of us who are familiar with philosophy and so the social sciences, so Foucault, di ba, may konsepto siya ng disciplining words matter because they discipline bodies, no? Pero put that aside for now. So what's wrong with all this? What's wrong, Jayeel? Because these essentialisms are simply in the interest of powerful sectors. Tingnan niyo po itong post na ito ng Bonifacio Global City, BGC. The caption, "Welcome to the home of passionate minds." Back in the day, passionate minds, so about 10 years ago, 15 years ago when BGC was rising, BGC was being described as the cosmopolitan place, no, where achievers, millennials, highly educated people, driven people would work and would live, and people would stay here and enjoy the place. In fact, there's a yung home of passionate minds. It's some slogans pa nga parang something related to millennials, no? Parang the home of millennials or something to that effect. And I wonder, when you come up with slogans like that, which millennials are they referring to? Obviously, they're referring to highly educated millennials born in the 1980s, okay, graduated from elite universities, speak proper English with certain accent, land in marketing jobs, advertising jobs, earn 6 digits in a matter of 3 years, and purchase a condo there. Now I wonder, paano naman po yung mga kabataan na hindi nila ma-afford yun? So yes, Nelson, it's just marketing and branding, but it shapes our consciousness. Ding, I know, okay, I get your point, who are very passionate about a lot of things. Let's talk about that later on, okay? Let's talk about yung passion yan later on. So in other words, the moment that you come up with the category millennials, okay, these are millennials or these are Gen Z, you're including certain segments of the population, but you're also excluding. So kasama po ba dyan, for example, yung mga janitors? Are they also part of the passionate minds? You get the point, no? You get the point that the exclusionary tendencies of these categories. Okay? Ito pa, I really like this tweet, no? Ortigas Land says, New East Wing was designed by millennials for millennials. Ortigas Cinemas includes 4 regular and 2 premier cinemas. There's also an Estan store in the malls. Estancia to, obviously. No, designed by millennials and for millennials. Again, from a sociological perspective, sino itong millennials na ito? Who are the millennials that are being referred to by these statements, by these slogans, right? So yes, we can say it's just marketing and it's just branding. Pero again, when experts pick them up and deploy them and repeat them, aren't we excluding many young people who cannot afford these lifestyles? And I propose to you, these excluded young Filipinos are in fact the majority in our country, as I will show you in a bit with some statistics. And how is you define young people to be digital natives, which is really a dangerous thing, di ba? Parang for all these years, kita sabi, young Filipinos are digital natives, tech savvy. Okay, and then the pandemic hit. Apparently, not everybody can access the internet, precisely because not everybody even has electricity at home. So all this talk about digital natives all crumble. But anyway, it's useful. It's useful to the business and advertising industry to say, oh, you're digital natives, you're tech natives, because, and in a very tautological and self-fulfilling manner, because you are digital natives, and therefore you need nice gadgets um, that will widen the possibilities in your life as a digital native. Okay, isa pa yan. Ito pa. So now we have these articles. Gen Z, Philippines, the future is here. This was published in 2019, and look at how the article refers to young Filipinos, college students who are Gen Z, who are Gen Z, and look at the definitions in categories, characteristics, number one, number two, number three. Gen Z wants to work with cutting edge technologies, advanced technology, which entice Gen Z job candidates and organizations are encouraged to take a tech first approach. And then may mga survey data, 88% Filipinos aspire to work with cutting edge technologies. 97% of Filipinos will consider the type of technology provided as important. Wow! Anong survey ito? Pag tinignan naman, tingnan natin yung methodology nito, most likely the survey relied on interviews or relied on college students in elite universities. This happens again and again. So now you understand what I'm trying to say. We pick up these categories, we use them to refer to only a very small segment of the population. Another number three. Gen Zers are confident about their tech skills, but that doesn't equate to workforce readiness. Organizations that develop upskilling initiatives. So it's all about preparing the workforce. I'm seeing some comments now. I'm seeing some comments. So the idea is that we should contextualize, especially living generations, because it can be weaponized. No, thank you, Manuel. Yes, weaponize is a strong word, but I get your drift. Yes, millennials are labeled as rebellious, for example. And in the moment, you enter the classroom, and then the assumption mo is that everybody is millennial, and therefore everybody has a rebellious tendency, or Gen Z being entitled, and so far, ganyan na kasi yung mga kabataan ngayon. We forget that we need to contextualize. And this is what sociologists and anthropologists are really good at, contextualizing. Ano pa yung problema nito? Elections. A few more slides, no? Elections. Folks, I understand that many of us would like to bank on young people to take control of their fate, as the title of this article shows, right? To take control of their fate in 2022 Philippine elections. Would it be nice, no, to really believe that the youth vote can take over and can change our destiny? Bakit, statistics would say that 50% of the population would, about 40% of the population would be about first-time voters, kasi mga 18 to 24, thereabouts, no, would be first-time voters, and they can really make an impact. Okay, fine. But again, that claim, once again, essentializes young people. How so? Let me show you. This is a statement from COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez. I challenge you and your generation to lead the way forward so that the rest of us may follow. He is writing to the youth in an open letter. I have no doubt that you are up to the task. You have to be. An entire nation is depending on you. Powerful. And if you're patriotic, yeah, amen, I agree. Young people, yeah, let's change the world. And kahit sa church, we do that. Young people are going to change the world. We will set the world on fire. I get that. I get the patriotism. I get the fervor. I get the inspiration. However, again, we're essentializing because, as I will show you later on, we may be very disappointed by the political choices of our youth. I'll show that in a bit. Ito naman, as youths, sabi ito ni John Deal, as a friend of mine, president of the National Union of Students in the Philippines, sabi niya, as youths, which make up a substantial proportion of the voting population, we have a huge role to play in the upcoming election, and that is to vote for comprehensive and competitive leaders. Again, inspiring, persuasive, compelling, patriotic, right? But again, without us realizing it, so kanina advertising yung pinag-uusapan ko natin, ngayon politics naman. Without us realizing it, we are again making the same discursive mistake of essentializing young people. We are assuming that young people or this generation are homogeneous. They think the same way, they behave the same way, they believe the same way. In fact, that's not quite the case. Paano po? Back in 2019, just before a month, just before the elections, I wrote this piece for Rappler. Pinakita ko po, uh, I wanted to challenge, yung ideas that young people are woke. Those of you who are active on Twitter, social media, you would have heard this idea many times. Woke, mulat, gising. And who would they be voting for at the time? No, sina Samira Gutok, Chel Jokno, essentially people that I voted for. No, ako mismo, and I don't have qualms about saying that in public, right? Because I believe that they embodied our virtues. So what did I do? I disaggregated survey data according to age, and guess what I found out? Ito na yun. Look at the voting patterns of 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 years old. If you want, Gen Z millennials, for the sake of argument. Sino sa younger people, sa college students, Lito Lapid was number 1. Bongo is there. Bong Revilla is there. Villar is there. Cayetano is there. De La Rosa, Estrada. Wala sila. Rojas, ang layo na nila. Aquino. 25 to 34, Villar, Lapid, Cayetano. And you see the same names again. Essentially replicating the very voting preferences of everybody else. Now, what I'm saying is that if we are banking on young people, and this is what I would ask you, are you happy with their choices, with their political choices? I leave it up to you, kasi it will be very contentious depending on your political leanings. But I am telling you that if we simply rely on, say, social media and all these claims that young people can make a difference, we might be setting ourselves up for massive disappointment. It does not necessarily mean that being young means being, embracing certain political or democratic values. Ano pa? Would you believe that in 2016, millennials actually voted for President Duterte? And you would have thought, how is it possible? They should have voted for a different category, right? They should have voted for a different set of candidates. But look at the exit poll survey results of SWS. I highlighted there in the middle of the screen. The survey conducted among 45,123 voters from 700. So exit poll, right? Duterte scored a 33-point lead over his closest rival among 18 to 24-year-old Filipinos, and 26-point lead in ages 25 to 34. So therefore, Nelson, I agree with you. I guess it is romanticizing the youth perception that they are idealistic. Folks, why am I saying all of this? This is not to disappoint all of us, but in the spirit of our faith and in the spirit of our intelligent understanding of our society, we need to make sense of what's really happening in our society today if we wanted to make a difference there. Number one, as people of God, and number two, as Filipinos. This is not really just for the sake of, basagan lang ng trip. I'm hoping that that's our realization today, which is why in a piece that I wrote just a few months ago for Rappler, Nelson, I think you would resonate with my argument here. In this piece, I think we're placing an unnecessary burden on Filipino youth whenever we claim that they should save us from the excesses of the adults. Again, something for us to think about every time we make essentialist remarks about young people. And this is all inspired by our sociological understanding of generational change. Therefore, in Philippine society, millennial culture is not only articulated by adults and internalized by the youth. It is defined by the privileged, about the privileged. The discourse about the minority has been imposed on the majority. And that is why it's very, very dangerous. And we need to be cautious and conscious about this. Jeff, I agree with you. Social media could exclude and has algorithms that make them echo chambers. So all the talk about woke, youth, vote, that's an echo chamber. And if we bank on that, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. Pocket. Because here's the reality. Young people, sige Ateneo, I'll talk about the implications in our church ministry, or maybe it's during the open forum. Let's see, no? Because the reality, folks, is that this is a fragmented generation. And you can argue that we always have been. Economic situation, that's the reality. I don't have time to unpack all the survey data that I have. Later on, I'll share with you the publication that I have on this. Pinakita ko doon na actually many of our young people come from low income backgrounds. So I suspect that people like us right now who are here in this Zoom room, we are not the majority. If we just look at our credentials and our income status, for example. Unemployment, just to drive home the point, unemployment before COVID, there's such a thing called youth unemployment. So young people who belong to 18 to 24 and then 25 to 34, binibilang ng statisticians or ng mga survey, mga polling firms, how many within this age bracket are looking for a job and never found a job. Ang tawag doon, youth unemployment. Pre-COVID, pumalo tayo at 49 or 50%, right? I just wanted to share with you this thing. In the time of COVID, 18 to 24 years old, so joblessness has risen once again to 27.6%. This is national, okay? This is national. But if you disaggregate this according to age bracket, let's focus on 18 to 24, you realize it's about 49% of 18 to 24-year-old Filipinos who are looking for a job but cannot find a job. 49% youth unemployment. If you focus on 25 to 34, you see that it's about 30%. So sino ang tinatamaan talaga ng COVID in terms of joblessness? Young people. Young people. Educational access, out of school youth, people who are now, who have decided not to enroll, and there are many of them. And even educational quality. We cannot deny the fact that in our highly stratified society, which school you went to makes a huge difference in your life chances later on. Sociologists call that opportunity structures. And then finally, other modes of social inequality, ethnicity, geography. Folks, I'm so sorry to say, yeah, future looks grim for the young. I want us to confront this reality because most of the time we're only focused on Manila, we're forgetting the fact that there are realities outside. I am doing my research now. I was doing fieldwork in Marawi after the siege. And folks, I hope that many of you do realize that the poorest region in the Philippines is the Bangsamoro. Unemployment is high, youth unemployment is high, out of school youth rates education and enrollment is low. No? And so therefore poverty is also very high. Are they part of the conversation whenever we talk about passionate youth? Are they also part of the conversation when we talk about youth who have a bright future? And this is why I need us to be sensitive to the realities outside our social spheres. Finally realize that we need to complicate how we understand young people today. So therefore, what's a shared experience? Kanina, di ba, I said shared experiences define a generation. My humble proposition to you is this: inequality is our shared experience. That is why you talk to a college student from a private university like Ateneo, he or she would have a very different outlook. Contrast that with the possibilities or aspirations of a college student from a state university, or let alone an out-of-school youth. You will see both could be passionate, but I have to argue that the possibilities, the horizon of possibilities, the horizons of possibilities are markedly different from one another. When I was doing my research years ago for this book, for my first book, Being Catholic in the Philippines, based on my dissertation, when I was doing my interviews, I will never forget this guy. Kinausap ko siya. He was a engineering student in a state university dito sa Manila. Let's call him Alfred. Alfred, so ano mga pangarap mo sa buhay? Kuya Jay, I am now taking up engineering. Pero I have to, but without prompting him, sinundan niya yung sentence na yon. But I don't know if I will be an engineer, Kuya Jay. Kung hindi po ako maging engineer, okay na po ako maging welder sa Saudi. You see, again, one sentence like that. Again, no judgment on welders. This is not a moral judgment on welder versus engineer. It's not. It's a recognition of the horizon of possibility available to certain young people. And those horizons are very limited compared to other people who have better chances at life. And I propose to you that in the Philippines, the reality is that we are so unequal. Dagdagan mo pa ng mga politicians who disappoint our youth. Sabi ni Professor Randy David, and I will end now. Self-serving politics can only spawn among the younger generation an even more individualistic and self-centered attitude towards life. Ever wondered why there are no young people who run for SK elections? There are thousands and thousands of SK positions, but there are only a limited number of people who choose to run for the SK, precisely because that's not where they think they could be very effective. Politics disillusions them. So the big question is, what can we do as people of faith? What can we do as writers? What can we do as invested people? I understand that we are all kindred spirits in this room, and I would just invite you to reflect on this question during our open forum. If you're interested in this, in more of this, this is the book that Ateneo was mentioning and from which I based a big chunk of my presentation tonight. This is the book that I shared just now, and these are my contact details. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. This one, if you could visit my website, the introduction to my books are available there, downloadable for free. Just click on the books section, the books tab. Makikita niyo po doon. But if not, they're on Lazada and Shopee as well. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. I hope that this has been a fruitful time for you all. I'm looking forward to your questions and to your insights. Athena?
Yeah, thank you, Jayeel. I'm just reading RD's comment. He wrote on the chat box, you forgot
Yes.
to mention about the redemption part.
Sir RD, Sir RD, pag sinabi ng mga sociologists ang redemption, you need to be very cautious. Kasi for sociologists, our redemption lies in understanding the realities first and foremost. Demystifying our romantic view of young people, that in itself is a redemptive moment. And I hope that that is a redemptive insight for all of us tonight as well. Na, oh my. So when I enter the classroom, I cannot assume na lahat sila pasaway. Oh my. So when I deal with young people in our church, I cannot simply assume na, they're all entitled. Bakit? Contexts do matter. Passionate silang lahat. Hindi pwedeng i-assume na we understand the passion that they have. Because as I said just now, the horizons of possibilities differ depending on your social location. Therefore, the pabaon that I have for you is really, please understand the situation of our young people before we make any decisive statements about them. Yan. I hope
Thank
that's
you.
redemptive enough. um, Having said that, I would encourage you, especially the parents right now, take advantage of every opportunity that you can have to let your children, young people there, interact with other people, of course, in a very safe manner. Natanong din sa akin